The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, has been a cornerstone of global security for over 70 years, playing a pivotal role in maintaining peace and stability. Established in 1949, its primary goal was to counter the Soviet Union's influence in Europe, ensuring that the Western nations could stand united against any potential threats. After the Cold War ended, NATO expanded eastward, incorporating many former Soviet republics, which significantly altered the political landscape of Europe. This expansion was meant to promote democracy and stability, but also raised tensions with Russia, leading to a complex and often contentious relationship. Today, the world faces new challenges that are vastly different from those of the past. The rise of China, a global superpower with different values and ambitions, is reshaping the geopolitical landscape in profound ways. Technological advancements in warfare, particularly in cyber and space, are changing how conflicts are fought, making traditional military strategies less effective. These shifts raise questions about NATO's ability to adapt and remain effective in this new era. NATO's future is uncertain, and its role is being constantly re-evaluated. Internal divisions, economic constraints, and the emergence of new threats pose significant challenges that NATO must address to stay relevant. To understand why NATO might not survive, we must examine these challenges in detail and consider the potential consequences for global security and stability. NATO is an alliance of sovereign nations, each with its own interests and priorities, which can sometimes lead to internal friction. While the organization thrives on collective defense, disagreements among members can weaken its unity and effectiveness. One significant point of contention is the level of military spending required from each member nation. NATO members commit to spending at least 2% of their GDP on defense, a goal that is not always met. However, many countries fall short of this target, creating a burden-sharing imbalance that affects the alliance's overall strength. This disparity has led to criticism, particularly from the United States, which contributes the most to NATO's budget and resources. Another source of tension is the varying threat perceptions among members, which can lead to strategic disagreements. Eastern European countries, particularly those bordering Russia, feel more vulnerable and advocate for a stronger NATO presence in the region to deter potential threats. In contrast, some Western European nations prioritize other security concerns, such as terrorism or instability in North Africa, which they see as more immediate threats. These differences in perspective can make it difficult for NATO to formulate a cohesive and decisive response to emerging crises, potentially undermining its effectiveness. Maintaining a robust military alliance comes at a significant cost. NATO members face increasing pressure to balance their defense budgets with other domestic priorities such as healthcare, education, and social welfare. The global economic landscape adds further complexity. Economic downturns, trade wars, and energy crises can strain national budgets, making it challenging for governments to justify increased military spending. The rise of populism and nationalism in some NATO countries also poses challenges. These movements often prioritize national interests over international cooperation and view multilateral organizations like NATO with skepticism. This trend could lead to reduced political will to support NATO financially or militarily. The world is no longer defined by a bipolar Cold War rivalry. New threats, often transnational and multifaceted, have emerged, demanding a different approach to security. Cyber attacks, terrorism, climate change, and pandemics transcend national borders and require international cooperation to address effectively. While NATO has made efforts to adapt to these challenges, its traditional focus on territorial defense might not be sufficient. Moreover, the global balance of power is shifting. The rise of China, both economically and militarily, presents a new set of challenges for NATO. China's growing influence in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, coupled with its assertive foreign policy, could lead to competition for resources and influence, potentially drawing NATO into new areas of conflict. China's economic rise has been nothing short of remarkable. Once a developing nation, it is now the world's second-largest economy and a major player in global trade. This economic strength has enabled China to invest heavily in its military, modernizing its forces and developing advanced weaponry. While China's military capabilities still lag behind the United States, the gap is narrowing. China's growing military might, coupled with its economic clout, allows it to project power further afield, challenging the established international order. China's Belt and Road Initiative, a massive infrastructure project spanning continents, is seen by some as a way for China to expand its influence globally. Russia, despite its economic challenges, remains a formidable military power with a vast nuclear arsenal. Under President Vladimir Putin, Russia has adopted a more assertive foreign policy seeking to restore its influence in its near abroad and reassert itself on the world stage. Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014 and its ongoing support for separatists in eastern Ukraine have heightened tensions with NATO. These actions demonstrate Russia's willingness to use military force to achieve its objectives and challenge the territorial integrity of its neighbors. NATO has responded by increasing its military presence in Eastern Europe and conducting military exercises to deter further Russian aggression. Section 7. The changing face of warfare, adapting to new battlefields. Technological advancements are rapidly changing the nature of warfare. Cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, and space-based weapons systems are increasingly prominent features of modern conflicts. These new forms of warfare blur the lines between peace and war and pose significant challenges for traditional military alliances like NATO. Cyber attacks in particular can cripple critical infrastructure, disrupt economies, and sow discord within societies. The interconnected nature of the digital world makes it difficult to attribute these attacks and respond effectively. NATO needs to adapt its doctrine, capabilities, and command structures to address these new threats effectively. Section 8. The question of relevance. Evolving threats, evolving responses. The changing nature of global threats raises questions about NATO's continued relevance. Some argue that NATO's traditional focus on territorial defense is outdated in an era of hybrid warfare and transnational challenges. They advocate for a more flexible and adaptable alliance capable of addressing a wider range of security concerns. Others argue that NATO's core mission of collective defense remains essential, particularly in light of Russia's assertive behavior. They believe that a strong NATO is crucial to deterring aggression and maintaining stability in Europe. The debate over NATO's future role is likely to intensify as the security environment becomes more complex and unpredictable. Section 9. Future scenarios. Navigating uncertainty in a complex world. Predicting the future is inherently uncertain, but several scenarios are plausible. Each scenario presents unique challenges and opportunities for NATO and its member states. One possibility is that NATO adapts to the changing security environment, evolving into a more flexible and versatile alliance capable of addressing a broader range of threats. This would involve integrating cutting-edge technologies and innovative strategies. This would require a renewed commitment from member states to invest in new capabilities and adapt their strategic thinking. Increased collaboration and resource sharing would be essential to maintain a unified front. Another scenario is that NATO continues to exist but becomes increasingly divided and ineffective. Internal rifts could deepen, leading to a lack of cohesion and mutual trust among member nations. Internal disagreements over burden sharing, threat perceptions, and strategic priorities could paralyze the alliance, making it difficult to respond decisively to crises. This fragmentation could erode the alliance's foundational principles. This would weaken NATO's credibility and undermine its ability to deter aggression. The loss of a unified stance could embolden adversaries and destabilize global security. A third possibility is that NATO gradually fades into irrelevance as the global security architecture shifts. The alliance might struggle to keep pace with rapid geopolitical changes. The rise of new powers, the emergence of new threats, and the changing nature of warfare could render NATO's traditional role obsolete. Cyber warfare and space-based conflicts could redefine security priorities. In this scenario, regional security arrangements or ad hoc coalitions might emerge to address specific threats. These new alliances could fill the void left by a diminished NATO, but their effectiveness would vary. Section 10. Conclusion. Can NATO adapt and survive? NATO's future is uncertain. Internal divisions, economic constraints, the rise of new powers, and the changing nature of warfare pose significant challenges to the alliance's continued relevance and effectiveness. Whether NATO can adapt to these challenges and survive in the 21st century remains an open question. The answer depends on several factors, including the willingness of member states to address internal divisions, invest in new capabilities, and adapt their strategic thinking. It also depends on how the global security environment evolves and whether new threats can be addressed effectively through collective action. The choices made by NATO members in the coming years will determine the fate of the alliance and shape the future of global security.